Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another wonderful show, Simply Walk the Talk. I am your host, Joshua J. Holland, and today I have with me Mr. Christian Elliot. Now, Christian is a health coach and very similar to some of the things that I talk about a lot on this show. And he is part of a duo at TrueWholeHealth.com. TrueWholeHuman.com. TrueWholeHuman.com. He also runs a blog called Deconstructing. What is the
Deconstructingconventional.com.
There we go. Yep. There we go. So we just go through those intros like that. But Mr. Christian Elliot, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. So I'll let people know that for those of you that are watching on YouTube or watching the video, this is actually my first guest that I'm using with the platform Riverside.fm. I've talked about it before on other posts. And so if we have any kind of hangups or mishaps or whatever, it's totally my fault. And it's most likely because I don't know how to use this as well yet, keyword yet. But in all things optimizing lifestyle and health and wellness and things like that, I thought it would be perfect to have Christian on. He's in Florida right now. I'm in New York. I'm finally back from Budapest. And I felt like, let's have a good conversation with someone who knows what they're talking about. So, Christian, let's talk about your background, how you got into health and wellness and why you started what you started.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah. So I guess, short version, in 2003, I was finishing up grad school, engaged to be married, and I was on a kind of 2-year skid where my health was declining, or I was wrestling with challenges that were not getting better. I had some degeneration in my shoulders and an immune system that was just really having a hard time. You could say I was sick frequently. And so my foray into health was really as much just to get my own health back and to think, I'm 27. I'm not going to be living a very healthy life if I don't get back in front of this now. And so I had the good fortune to come across a group of doctors, actually chiropractors. I had been to half a dozen medical doctors who had really no answers for me. And so went to a chiropractic group, and they just blew my mind with what I did not know about health. They took my paradigm of health and what I thought it took to get well, turned it upside down, and healed me in about 6 months. And that really got the majority of the healing done. It took about 2 years really to feel like, okay, I've hit terra firma. I know how to do this. And it really just sent me on a quest of study. I'm an insatiably curious person. And so being that way, I dove into, why in the world did I not know about this younger in life? Why is it that this way of healing was so foreign to my entire existence? And through studying, I came to just to understand what a lot of people in the natural health realm have figured out, that pharma isn't always looking out for you. And there's a business side of this that is not necessarily about health. It's about something else. And so seeing how much I didn't know about nutrition and where my food came from, or how to exercise in a way that actually built me up rather than break me down and so on, that it became a little hobby. It became a way to get well. And friends started asking about what I was doing, or people eventually were willing to pay me for some of my time to pass on what I had learned. And it really just started that way. It grew into, we got, certifications in different aspects of health and wellness. And then worked at a big box gym for a while, did some nutrition work, and had the opportunity to run our own space. So we started humble 400 square feet and had a loyal client base that, short version of that story is we went from 400 square feet to eventually to 10,000 square feet. We had about 40 different employees. Wow. We had, across the spectrum of health and wellness, really, from chiropractors to massage therapists, acupuncturists, personal trainers, nutritionists, just about every type of group fitness you could think of. And we just integrated that in one place. And I, for the longest time, or first half of that, my experience or my perspective was really, what does it take to help someone get well? What does it take to create a breakthrough? And my perspective was that I just needed to get better and study health from as many angles as I possibly could. And the better I got at that, the easier all of this health stuff would get, that I could finally crack the code on getting people well. And what I eventually realized, what I eventually came to, was I can have the best health information in the world. But if I don't have a way to help the whole human, if I can't approach this person not as a set of biological puzzles or nutrient deficiencies or corrective exercises that needed to be done, but to recognize there's a person with emotions here. There's a person with a story here. There's a person whose context of life is different than someone else's. And so that recognition really, it went from just a deep dive. I've had over 36 different healing modalities done on my own body. I've tried a lot of things to get well, and had the good fortune to sit with or work with or hire, give jobs to people that are really qualified and across the spectrum and health. And so had that down. But what really started making a difference or being transformative was the other two areas. It was the psychology, the human nature element of it, the person specific. Here are the stress responses. Here are the avoidance patterns. Here are the partial truths and lies mixed together that I've been believing for a long time. Here are the mindset blocks that have kept me from actually enjoying the health that I'm capable of. And that aspect, and then just I have a brain that loves complicated and loves strategy and doesn't get intimidated by complexity. And so that puzzle of health, of human nature, and then, well, what is this person's day-to-day? What responsibilities do they have? What aspirations? How much support structure? What makes claims on their time? And if you can get good, what I found, if you can really address those three, you can make some fantastic breakthroughs. And so after about 9 years brick and mortar, we transitioned to a kind of a virtual packaging of our offerings. And I don't work with very many people now. I work with a few, but we go to depth on all of those areas. And so, my wife and I had a chance to rethink, what do we really want to be about? What kind of business do we want to run? And what we found is, it came back to, I just love creating breakthroughs for people. I like a transformation story of somebody who changed and never went back to their old self. And so I relentlessly keep asking that question: what does it take to create a breakthrough? And so it has morphed into a coaching program where that's, I get paid to ask really good questions or think hard on one person's story at depth and wrestle with what would it take for this person to change. And so that's a very long version of how I got into doing what we do. But yeah, that's where we are today.
I love it. There's so many synchronicities and parallel paths that you and I have gone down, which I think is exciting. But it also makes sense, because I think to get to where you are and to continue doing what you're doing, I think it almost, there's a need for having to have these kind of experiences, and, experiences that we can learn from. And I always say that experience trumps knowledge in some aspects, because of course you can study, you can memorize various things, but when you really experience something, it's within your DNA, within your bones, then it's easier to come from a place of authenticity and integrity and things like that. So it was really, I'm glad you pointed it out the way you did.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, it's been fun work. I spent about 10 years working full time as a trainer, and what I realized through the course of doing that is there's probably no profession in the entire realm of anything health where you spend more time one-on-one with the same person over the course of years, like 2 or 3 times a week. You see the same people for years. Yeah. You really get to know their story, but you get an ability to your point about experience, to observe patterns that people get into, and you walk them through different seasons and stages of life, or different traumas, or different, birthdays and holidays and weddings. And that there starts to emerge some pretty predictable patterns that you don't necessarily see when you're studying books and you're studying vitamins and all the other different things that are relevant, but are such a small portion of the actual person.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah. It's, I can relate to you saying that working with people over a long period of time enables you to be able to find out various things about their patterns and their habits. I have this thing. So I have a book coming out, and listening to you talk about your approach reminds me of some of the proofreading I'm having to do as we speak. Like before we even got on this morning, I was doing some more proofreading with the manuscript, and it just reminds me of the various things that you were just discussing. But awareness is one of the big things you mentioned that I attach to, because being aware of yourself, of your clients, is kind of the peak, I think, of learning how to optimize one's health and wellness. And as a health coach, as both of us being health coaches and trainers, I feel like it's great to be able to work with someone for a long period of time, because you can learn certain things about their history. But then I always say, it's not my goal to have you work with me for the rest of your life. It's, I want to get you on your way. Use me as a resource for sure, right? But if I must be doing something wrong if I have to be working with you every day for the rest of your life,
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's different aspects to it. Like you're right. Knowing yourself is one of the best uses of your time. Trying to actually really get curious about the patterns you're in, about what motivates you or where your motivation gets away from you. So much of our culture is just move to the next thing that sounds like it will help. And the ability to slow down so you can speed up, to go, wait, I'm in the same loop. I mean, the statistics are the average person in the U.S. goes on a diet 55 times. So, I mean, that's once or twice a year for most of your adult life, you go on a diet and you get this kick, and I'm going to do it this time. And a few months, a few weeks later, you're sliding back down, and then you just wait till you feel crummy enough and you try it again. And the ability to step back and be like, there's got to be a different way to think about this pattern, this puzzle. Like, something about the operating system of change is not working. And what would it look like to know myself better? We, part of our blessing and as health coaches has been able, at the breadth of clients we've worked with, we step back and say, okay, well, what are the predictable patterns people get in? If we could help somebody know themselves better on the front end, have more awareness of a typical trajectory or a set of excuses they're likely to make, or just a mindset block or a set of beliefs that they've taken with them, what would be those typical stories? And so we just did a multi-month analysis of that, and really ended up with about 4 different, what we ended up calling transformation types. And just, it's a way that human nature and your personality or your history wraps itself into the process of change in any meaningful way. But we did it in health in particular. And we're just able to go, wow, yeah, this person and this person, and they all had a similar pattern. And so we just came up with questions that, as best we could, help people get a better sense of where they are in their journey and what's a typical path. And so you're right. Just being able to know, oh, this is why I'm actually doing this. This is why I don't feel motivated when this happens, or this is the part where I always get stuck. And if there's one question that we tend to solve or help people with the most, it's probably that I know what to do, but I can't make myself do it. There's some iteration of that, some version of like, yeah, but I don't have the will to turn the engine when it comes time for the thing. And so we did focus fire on that particular common human experience. It's everybody at some point has that,
yeah,
but I don't feel like it, even though I know. So what do I do with it? And
right.
And the ability to know yourself and to understand, oh, here it comes again. Can I outthink this pattern before it shows up? What would it take to choose differently? What would have to be true for this to not continue this way? And how fast can I lose weight is a very different question than what would it take for me to be consistent at this for a year, or what am I able to do on my worst days? And it's looking for ways to make this puzzle easier rather than just making it complicated.
So is that point you just went over, was that one of the 4 questions that you guys came up with?
That actually wasn't even one of the questions. I think there's 10 or 12 questions, I think 12 questions we have in there just to help you. They're simple introvert, extrovert, but then it's really like, when you look back, what are some of the things that a typical, when something didn't work out, was it that you were overcommitted? Was it the opposite of that? And understanding, this is the pattern. I didn't overestimate my capacity. I just sold myself short. I kept telling myself that I can't do it. And so we just give you questions, and for some people they're like, you just totally nailed me, and other people are like, kind of fit. So the reality is that we're a mix of different excuses, and there's no like any personality type of test or quiz you take. It's not going to be like 100% white light from heaven, like holy cow. It's meant to give you questions or tools or other ways to look at it, and often it's the strengths you don't have or the strength someone else has that offers the biggest opportunity. If you lean into developing that skill, that helps you know yourself better, or just try on a different set of habits or behaviors and rethink this puzzle. Because nobody, as far as I can tell, can give you the 100% foolproof plan that's going to work every time. That's impossible. So can we iterate? Can we, to your point about change, can we, or part of the reason I think why people stick around for as long as they have, some clients, a couple have been with me for about 4 years now, just in the virtual realm. And so, what's happening, I think they're changing when they grow and develop or mature in a particular area. Now the questions I wrestle with are different. I've autopiloted, I've optimized this, but now I have different questions. Now I want to actually solve this problem, or I want to see if I can become more in this way. And that's part of the fun of knowing yourself, or of realizing that you don't graduate from these questions and like, okay, I've solved that. I don't have to work out anymore. I did enough of that in my 20s or 30s. Like, no, it's ongoing. So what does it look like at this age with these kids, or with that job, or with this limitation? And how would I make progress with this setback? And some of the nuance of that's just, to me, where it's fun, because I'm not just developing clients, I'm developing friends, and I'm developing people who the impact they get to have in their life is where I find some of my biggest joy. So anyway, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
no, you absolutely did. And I think that evolving of your questions along with your clients it plays very well into your natural curiosity. And that's probably why it's fun for you. I have the same thing. And, it's like I treat each day with each client, each moment with each client very differently, because each day is different, right? Each moment is different. So I think that's beautifully put. Now, you mentioned early on, you had this brick and mortar location, and then just now you mentioned that you have some clients that you've worked with virtually for years. How has this global pandemic affected your business, and, positively or negatively, or, did anything change? I would assume so, but
yeah, no, it's definitely changed a few different things. One, it's just, the heaviness that a lot of people have to process. It's, we can talk about carbs and protein and fat, and we can talk about grams of fiber and rep counts for how many minutes of cardio. But what's weighing on their mind, and it's the elephant in the room if we don't talk about it. Like, this COVID thing is wearing on me. It's making me anxious. It's making me fearful. It is stressing me out, and I don't know how to handle it. So my stress responses, my eating habits, my this, that, the other, those are all very palpable and very real, and helping people feel like the sky is not falling, and coming up with philosophies. We had our own, fairly traumatic exit from brick and mortar. We had to close the business unexpectedly. We had to figure out how to repackage and rebuild our life from zero, which is what a lot of people are facing right now. And when you do when you go through something like that and realize that, there's life on the other side of this. This is humans can overcome amazing things if we have the will to do it, and if we have the elements of purpose that make it all worth it, or the belief that we can do something. And so a lot of what I end up doing for people these days is helping them realize, no, the world's going to go crazy whether or not you take care of yourself. So we might as well take care of you. And you can bring the best you to this if you will double down on the things that you inevitably know are going to serve you well whenever this is over, and finding the will and the practical strategy through some of this haze that's been different. I've done more of that than I was typically doing before that started. And it's also just, for us, it's been good. We've found a lot of people who resonate with our approach and who really they're tired of another diet, and it's just like, no matter where you go, it sounds like the same claims and the same boring stuff, and maybe this one will work. And they're ready, typically, at least the people we've attracted are ready to face themselves. They're ready to say, where have I been the problem here? And not just like, just tell me how many calories to eat and how many minutes of cardio. They don't want that. They want to know, how do I change me? And COVID, in a lot of ways, has just shined a hot light of anywhere where our patterns or our avoidance or our responses to things were just a little unhealthy. It magnified them and made them harder to ignore, especially if there's relational tension, or if you got to spend more time at home with your family, or if your patterns for how you were getting along for work, health, whatever. It's disrupted things, and disruption can be really, really good, because it can force you to forge a type of character that you would not have formed without struggle. And, there's not much in our culture that embraces struggle. It's usually, we're looking for ease. We have the easy button. We have apps that do everything. We can push buttons and food shows up at our door. And when you realize, exercise is about the only thing where we kind of hat tip, that struggle thing can actually work out and produce character. And you realize that life and COVID and all the stresses that we've been under have the opportunity to sharpen us as humans and to give us a level of resilience that we would otherwise not have if we didn't choose to lean into it and say, okay, this is hard, but what can I make of it? I defy this era of history to break my will, and I will get through this, and I will overcome. And I don't even know what that looks like. And today's hard, and it's foggy, and it's heavy, but I'm still here, and there's still somebody that needs my help. And if I show up, their life can get better. And it's just stringing together enough little small wins and keeping them focused on the positive that often really makes the difference. Because it when you have to do that, not you do it because that makes sense, but when you have to do it, it quickens your resolve in a way that not much else can. And that's been different, but it's been a fun journey, because it forces me to grow as a coach too. I don't get to stay stagnant. I'm wrestling with different problems now with people. But it always comes back to, well, are you going to take care of your body so you can accomplish this mission, or are we just going to mail it in? And when they realize, okay, we can do this, it's going to be hard, but I can't just throw my health to the wind and hope that it's going to hold up. And especially now, health is a pretty important topic. Like, maybe we should think about how to empower the immune system and be ready for whatever's coming. So long answer again, but those are some of the ways that COVID's been different for us, or some of the things we've been working through with people.
Yeah, like most people, there's been a lot of questions that are being asked, and I think, the right questions. And I think I always go back to this saying, anytime there's a question, there's an opportunity to educate, especially in our fields, and especially with what we do. And so I'm actually happy with what has happened, and I hope that there's more of these questions that start to come out, and less misinformation. But it's going to be hard, because I think that's one of the big struggles with our modern society, is that now we've got very fast information, period. Whether it's good information or bad information, we have very fast information at our fingertips, and so there's a lot of things happening right now. And my book talks a lot about, it's called The Awareness Shift, right? And it talks about how, going back to ourselves, how we can really start to ask ourselves these questions before we react and before we take action into other things. So again, I love what you said. I know that it's tough. Are you planning on going back to a brick and mortar location, or
at this point? Yeah, no, it's been, I didn't know if I would want to, and I enjoy this so much. There's a lot of freedom in, I can work from anywhere, and I can be home and present with my kids. And a brick and mortar, and especially in a health and wellness, you have to work when other people aren't. So it's a lot of service industry hours, and it's tough on family life. So for now, this fits me, and maybe somebody can pull me back into a more a bigger team and a big environment, and that sort of thing. And that may fit me perfectly. But for now, I just love this work. I love going deep with a few people rather than trying to sell, to 1,000 people at once, and they superficially engage, and I don't really get to be involved in their stories. I'm in it for the relationships and the struggle through the change as much as anything.
Right. So then, okay, as someone is listening or watching, I imagine at some point putting myself in the shoes of the listener or the viewer, they're probably wondering, okay, so Christian, like we love your approach. All sounds great. All sounds good. But what happens when rubber meets the road? What are some of the things that you found to have the most success with from the biggest majority of people? I know you did talk about, you compiled a bunch of questions, but maybe we can identify some of those, or we can actually start to give some sense of what you actually do in a real-time environment.
Sure. Yeah. So, every client journey typically starts in the same place. We do what we call a health audit, which is just a full intake of your health and doctors you're seeing and whatever things you're putting in your body. And then we do what's called a habits audit, which is really just, we look at health from the perspective of, we're not treating any particular condition. We are trying to build health. We're trying to empower the body to function as optimally as possible. And in so doing, the body sorts out almost every thing that's going on because it has the resources and time and space it needs to do the healing that you can't. It's really hard to duplicate with reductionists. Like, you have this problem, we take this drug and it snips this enzyme and then it doesn't work anymore, and then you don't feel this symptom anymore. And like, that's a really hard way to get anybody to improve their health. So we're just like, well, what are the things everyone has to do, and how well are we doing at those things, and what would it look like to start to change? Of all the things we could do to change, where are we going to start? So after a habits audit and a health audit, for some people, we end up right away going into a really intense goal setting, like our goal clarification, like, because our perspective on health isn't, get your health in order and then the clouds will part and there'll be sunshine and rainbows everywhere. It's what life makes all this effort worth it. Like, where are we going with all this? What's the golden ticket of a good life? So for a lot of people, we step back and say, well, okay, what are the goals that we'd want to work on for, say, a year? And health is obviously one of those. And we get very specific, a SMART filter, if you know that. We look at what are we going to actually work on and track. And for most people, when it comes to the health, then where we often see the biggest difference is just cleaning up people's diets. Nutrition is so fantastically healing if you know what you're doing. Otherwise, you could be really disciplined with crummy advice and just be frustrated forever, not knowing, was it me or was it the advice? So we really do a deep dive into how does the body use food to heal? What are the common nutritional sinkholes that we have, or what is your diet like? And so that sometimes means we teach people to cook. We have cooking classes. We sometimes give them specific eating plans. We often go straight for gut health, because if you have a gut dysbiosis, if you have a gut that's not functioning well, it doesn't matter how nutritious your food is. You can't absorb it. Right. So maybe sometimes we go straight after gut health, and it's usually nutrition and gut health that unlock a significant level of healing. And we also have other healing protocols we can do, one of which is fasting. Like, there's probably nothing in the world that heals the body faster than fasting. There's a lot of ways to botch it. There's a lot of ways to just, kind of mess up your metabolism as you're doing it. So we teach people how do you progress to a multi-day fast and use this to heal your body? How do you get your body ready for it? How do you not, undo the benefits you got from it right after you finish, and use it as a regular rhythm, maybe, if you're relatively healthy, once a year rhythm to reset your body to something healthy. And so we'll teach people how to do that. Another big component of health is obviously fitness. So we'll often dive into the specifics of exercise, and that can start with things as simple as analyzing the structure and posture and figuring out where the axle's crooked, so to speak. If you've got an axle that's twisted and you're wearing down one joint or one side of your body more than the other, how do we realign that? How do we make sure your tires don't go bald on one side, so to speak? And then, from a foundation of fitness, how do we rebuild the way you moved from birth to early childhood? Where have you just lost the ability to move like a kid? And what would it look like to start to move more that way? And then from there, you can actually progress to what most people think of as exercise. Like, oh, now I get to work out. Like, it's right. Thinking of exercise as different from movement that is often a paradigm shift for people. And when you recognize you can work out for an hour a day, let's say 5 days a week, 7 days a week, whatever, you have 168 hours in a week. And if all you do is work out hard for 5 hours and you sit on your butt for 100, that's bad math. What would it look like to change that? Right? How do we get you to not to undo some of the reasons why you're stiffening and why you're this, that, or the other joint hurts. And so it's peeling back the layers and using movement medicinally to actually find, of all the things in the realm of exercise, what do you like? Where can we start? What would we do for your body? How do we rebuild it? How do we come to emotional peace with going to a gym or making yourself get up and work out? And so that said, I probably spend 75% of my time on the head stuff, on the psychology, on the human nature, on the having a hard week, this thing's going on in life. This is, a regular question I ask in coaching is, what was the obstacle that kept that from happening? Whenever we've set a clear goal and we work at it and then something inevitably interrupts, well, what kept that from happening? And we just do it with a fascinated mind, not a like, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad person. I can't do this. What's wrong with me? Get your act together. Like, that's so self-defeating. And so if you can do it with fascination and say, well, what kept it from happening? And then you can go, oh, this person, that event, this boundary I don't have, this story I tell myself when I get here. And you can untangle from that narrative and you can outthink that problem before it shows up the next time. Then you figured out how, okay, this is how I'm going to get my workout in. This is what I would have to say no to. How would I think more like an essentialist, to use Greg McKeown's word? How do I think like somebody who has such clear goals and such clear boundaries that it becomes really easy to, one of my favorite things a client ever said to me, she said, man, I thought as much as I had to invest in working with you that this would be so much harder. And it's refreshingly simpler to just not try to do everything at once and to try to get focused and to have clarity of what I say no to and to feel liberated when I say no rather than guilty. Like, some of those things are the questions that ultimately make it easier to practice the diet, to learn how to cook, to have the time for the workout and so on. So yeah, those are a few of the practical things, from just the audits to the diet and digestion and exercise or fasting. And there's no one path everyone goes on. We mix and match depending on where the person is and what they're wrestling with. And some people spend a lot more time on the human nature element, and some people spend a lot more time on the fitness or the nutrition. And we just pivot to what that person needs. So.
Right. So what do you think would be maybe the biggest pushback you get, after going through all of that? Because all of that sounds great. And I even love that you use the word audit, because most people think of audit as a sort of a thorough look into everything, right? So it's, good on you for using the word audit. But what do you find to be the biggest or pushbacks?
It's usually something emotional. Almost everyone has a yeah, but, or this, especially if, it's not uncommon for somebody to ghost on me when they're like, where have you been lately? Like, I can't get you in my schedule. And they have this, like, I'm a bad student. I didn't do my homework. I don't want to face the music. And it's not that they're often unwilling to, it's just like, darn it. I disappointed with themselves, or there's some thing in their story. There's something about what they're dealing with in their bigger life. That could be their marriage. That could be their job stress. That could be any number of things. But it usually comes back to relationships with other people, or an expectation they had that was here, and then they realized reality was down here, and the gap between the two of them causes this emotional dissonance. And helping them set realistic expectations, or helping reframe negative emotional moments or negative self-talk to say, well, can we give this a sanity check? Can we give it a filter that says there's a healthier way to look at this? And often it's just the ability to, the will to step back into that. Okay, why do I feel this way? And the will to say, yep, that's that bully that pushed me around the playground. That's something my mom said to me that I never got over. That's what my dad felt like. He was always oblivious and absent-minded and didn't care. And that's why I'm actually not doing it. So usually it's not the tactics of health, in my opinion, are the easier part to figure out. Like, there's definitely nuance that gets complicated at times. And depending on the client and how long the health challenge has been present, there can be some lengthy detective work to get to that. But usually, if you clear the mindset, if you develop this unflappability, this fascination instead of frustration, that to me is usually where I spend most of my time, helping people. I'm totally overestimating my capacity. I'm trying to do too much at once. It's impossible. Well, so let's not be crazy anymore and just make yourself feel defeated all the time. What would it look like to set a different boundary? What would it look like if you didn't have to do all of this stuff all of the time? And what can wait? And so it's again a longer answer. But the short version is it comes back to the emotional excuses and the willpower or the will to do the things that usually that's where I spend my time, because we've got direction. Now what's keeping you from doing it? And yeah, once you're willing to go there and you just accept that this is a process, I didn't get in this situation overnight and it's not going to go away overnight. There's a multi-month disentangling from some of the things that got me here, and I'm okay with that. And I'm going to work on it. And all we need is just a little feeling of progress here and there, and we can keep going.
Very nice. Yeah, I love it. I think this all makes a lot of sense, and I wish more and more people would look at people like you, more health coaches, because it's I even see it in my experience. I see that there's lots of CEOs and business owners or people who work for themselves, especially here in America. It's like, it's go, 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 work. And that sort of work lifestyle mentality bleeds into relationship mentality, bleeds into the way we treat our health. It's like, I get those very, very clients saying to me, okay, hey, look, I'm paying you, right? So I want you to coach me, but the way I want it done, not the way you believe that it might be done. And that's a very hard one to deal with, right? Because as trainers, especially trainers or health coaches or people in the service industry, especially everything we've been going through with not having, the same kind of work in the same way, you're faced with, do I possibly upset this client and lose this client, therefore not be able to feed my family or whatever? Or do I try to bring out the most in this person and then be willing to say, okay, we might not be a right fit if you're not going to be willing to listen to me? I find that one a hard battle to be in. But what are your thoughts with that? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think the way I've navigated that over the years is I just try to ask sincere questions. And I try not to come from a perspective like, I know best, I'm the master, you're the student, do what I say, because nobody likes to be told that. And the truth is, I don't know everything. There's plenty of new things I have to learn. And often there is something going on in that person's life. It's this black swan that you unearth a year later. You're like, whoa, so much of your story makes sense to me. I wish I had known that sooner. So having the humility to say, there's something else here that is influencing this person's behavior that I may not know about, that is emotional, that's under the surface that neither of us are even aware of. And so my curious mind just goes to questions about, what makes that feel unpalatable, or why do you prefer that I coach you that way? And the reality is, we can't be an accountability partner for 24 people or however many clients you have, right? That's logistically impossible. So we can be a coach and we can ask questions and we can do our best to follow up and make sure they have clear direction and help them find their version of welcomed accountability. But also know that sometimes I can't tell you how many clients I look back and I'm like, oh, they were just managing me. They were getting out of it what they wanted and not letting me touch or deal with some of the things that we would both objectively say, yeah, that's probably the heart of the matter. And I'm not qualified to work on all of the problems, but I do my best to create psychologically safe spaces where no question feels threatening. It feels like, okay, I trust you to talk about this question and keep it in confidence, but actually help me wrestle through it because you genuinely care, not because you're just trying to talk me into something because you think it's best. People don't usually do something because I think it's good. They do it because they think it was their idea. And that makes a lot of sense to them. And they've had their questions answered and they can't think of a better way to do it. Once in a while, you get somebody who just trusts the process. Whatever you tell me to do, I'm just going to do it. But for the most part, you get people who ask, that if you're going to try to substantively change someone's life and create a breakthrough, you have to be willing to go and ask the tougher questions with humility. At least that's the best way I've found to do it. And so the more you do it, the more there become questions that are ooh, that's a zinger. That really gets to the heart of the matter for most people. And tone and body language and everything is key to delivering that medicine. But if they feel safe, everyone welcomes it. It's not like we don't want to know ourselves, or we don't want life to get better, or we are unwilling to ever talk about something we could do better. There's a few people who are like that. We don't. I jokingly tell people we don't have any narcissists in our program because they don't need me. They know everything, and there's nothing I can teach them. And I wouldn't bother to try to change their mind anyway, because that's wasting my breath. But the people we collect are not that way. They're actually humble enough to want to be here and to look for answers. And as far as I can tell, they're not on an ego trip, just like, yeah, I have a health coach and I'm cooler than you. Nobody does that. So to be able to ask the right questions, I think, is probably the shortest way to answer that.
It's beautiful. I know my foray into various health coaching certifications, that was always one of the main takeaways from my learning is just asking great questions. And because, again, back to that statement I said earlier, questions provide an opportunity to educate for both parties or all parties.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's, because it's like, there's so many things I can think about from the person asking the question and the person that's receiving the question. It's like, wow, you can have profound conversations like what we do with this podcast, but you can have profound conversations with just one question sometimes and just shut up. You ask the question and shut up.
Yeah.
No,
that's fine. I jokingly say I get to be paid to be curious. I don't really think I have a lot of answers, but I have a lot of really good questions that can lead to much better answers. Most people know the right answer when they hear it, and that truth zings them like, oh, yep, that's where it's coming from. What would it take to do something about that becomes a different. Now we're both sitting on the same side of the table, analyzing the same problem of their life, going, oh, what would change? How could we do this differently? And sometimes, constraints of kids and work and how much time is available, you got to get really strategic and set some pretty firm boundaries. And then, well, what does it mean about me if I'm setting boundaries? And wrestle through this, but they're just questions. And if you approach them without this better work, or it's never going to, and you get fired up about it, well, you're already kind of setting yourself up to fail. If you just go, I'm starting a learning journey and this takes as long as it takes, but I'm committed to not quitting. And that mindset usually precedes any breakthrough that somebody's going to have. Yeah,
well said. Okay. So, as we kind of start getting closer to wrapping this up, like I like to always put myself in the shoes of the listener or the viewer. So, what would be something that a person, like a potential client, what would be something that you believe would be important, or a few things that would be important for them to find within a health coach or someone that does what you do?
Sure. Yeah. I think looking for breadth of experience, like in our work, we are not specialists. We are master generalists. And so can you find somebody who thinks broadly, who will look at a problem from different angles? And none of us can be certified in everything and have depth of knowledge and every type of skill that can help someone. But if you have range, if you have the ability to think about problems on different levels, that's a valued thing in a health coach. And so the more breadth they have, relatable. Can you picture yourself talking to this person, or do you feel like this person's gonna be a dictator, or they're insecure, or they're what? Like, just your gut feel when you talk to them. Does that make me feel better? And then you could look at their, do they have testimonies? Do they have clients' lives they've transformed? Can you talk to those people? Are they still with those people? Those are probably some of the best things. And somebody can have years of experience and worked with 2 clients for 10 years, or they can have, 2 years of experience and have worked with dozens of people. So to me, I like the breadth. I like looking at what other ways would this person approach a problem. And for us, we just try to be as holistic as possible. That's why we named our business the True Whole Human. I mean, I want to work with the whole thing. And so yeah, if that person resonates and you can think of it like investing rather than it's not a cost. It's saving you future health bills. It is that kid you might not have been able to have because you couldn't get pregnant. It's that surgery you don't need. It's, cancer is not cheap. Like, if you think of it as investing and you're willing to just embark on a process, and you have somebody who has a process that's laid out, that's methodical, and that can keep growing with you, those would be things I'd be looking for.
So then if I were to sort of flip that on its head or do a 180 and talk now from the perspective of the future health coach, or the person who might want to get into this industry, or someone who currently is a health coach looking for new clients or new opportunities, what would you say would be a few things you would identify as to why you would work with someone, or maybe why you would choose one client over another? Because let's face it, you can't take everybody, right? So what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for the health coach trying to figure out how to broaden their skill set, I would be studying human nature. I would be looking at the psychology of change, because that's where you're going to make the difference. That's where you're going to endear yourself to people, because when people share their story with you, they feel connected to you. They feel like, but this person knows me. They understand where I'm coming from. So your toolkit to be able to do that is to really get to know the human heart and what makes it beat. And interestingly, when you study marketing, you're studying human nature. When you study psychology, you're studying human nature. And when you study anthropology, you're like, there's so many elements of what is it that makes humans tick. And the more you get down to the things that we all have in common, that we're all longing for, your ability to speak to the human heart, or to help them realize, oh, this is actually what I want. This is what actually motivates me. This is what demotivates me. This is what makes me feel small and insignificant and unworthy. And you have some level of tools to work through that with people, that skill. And if you have the project management, master planning, you don't need full on Gantt charts or giant whiteboards of stuff. But if you have some element of enjoying strategy, of helping people think through the genuine limitations we all have. You can't be two places at once. If you say yes to something, you just said no to everything else. Are you okay with that? Like, if you have a project management and a psychology bent to you, you could do really well in this work. And then, what was the second part of your question?
Just like, what kind of clients do you look for? Because just like clients can look for the right kind of health coach or trainer, we can also look for the right type of client. So what does that look like?
Yeah, somebody that has been humbled enough that they're just brutally honest with themselves. Like, I want to change who I am, which is not to say who they are is bad. It's just if something is going to get better, guess who has to get better? You. If you're ready to level up as a person, if you're ready to face the music and face the mirror and stop making excuses, or recognize them and be humble enough to be like, yep, I'm doing it again. Crap. What would it take to change that? I wonder how would I break this pattern? Somebody that's got that humility and eagerness. Like, if you're one filter that makes it tough sometimes is people on psychiatric meds, because they can just be numb and not sad, which is hard to get them fired up and motivated. You don't necessarily bottom out and stay in the dumps, but you don't get to experience the highs either. Like, I had a client who needed to lose a significant amount of weight. He was on them. She's like, I just don't care that I'm fat. I'm like, well, what do I do with that?
Wow.
So if you don't have some drive, if you don't have some level of purpose, or at least a will to get off of those type of, I guess you could call them emotion suppressors, then and to just, because if you do, they're tough. And the flip side is they're tough to get off of, and it takes work. But somebody that comes that's got that often we have to have a conversation about, are you willing to consider a different path to let yourself feel some bad feels so that you can experience the highs and wrestle with what these things are keeping you numb from experiencing. Besides that, there's people from their 20s to their 70s right now. So across the age spectrum, the genders don't matter. It's just more willingness, and there's not really any health condition that scares me, because I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on building health, and what would that take, and giving you skills you don't have. So those are some of the things I look for, and that makes people a good fit usually. You
knocked it out the park, man. I think it's it's as if you prepared for every one of these questions, and we didn't, but it just goes to show that, like, this is truly what you do. And so I appreciate your willingness to share all of this. And I find it profound that you mentioned sort of like that difference between not feeling bad and actually feeling good and feeling healthy. It's a very big difference, right? Or just being numb or not feeling bad. I mean, that's very different than feeling good.
Right.
So yeah, that's a challenging one. Okay. So I know you've got to go, and I got to get going as well, but there's two questions that I like to ask every guest that comes onto the show, and I try my best not to forget these. My first question would be, Christian, what is something that would be a pet peeve of yours? If you could identify maybe one or two pet peeves, something that just gets under your skin, and it can be from any field. It doesn't have to be about health coaching. It can be from anything.
I guess where would I go with that? I've jokingly said I would uninvent car alarms, because those are just like, nobody's like, oh, there's a car alarm. We got to go when they're just annoying. But I guess I would say I'd uninvent 24-hour cable news. Like that, to me, that does such a detriment to our society in general and to our mind share. And its intent is to irritate and agitate you and to suck you in with negativity, because they understand the psychology that negative arrests our attention and we can't stop paying attention. And then we just get fed fear and oh my gosh. And so you turn it off, turn off social media for that matter, and just realize how much stress you just lost. Like, I never noticed the birds and stoplights and other things that stress us out so much and put us on edge needlessly. It's a little, I've refined that thinking a little bit, just because COVID is so aggressive in your face right now. And there are so many things that it's worth paying attention to know what's coming or what's going on. But what's the limited minimum effective dose that helps you be informed, and then turn it off? Like, you do not need that on all the day. So that may mean get rid of your television. What is it costing you to watch TV? Not like, what does the TV cost, but like, how much of your life are you giving up to sit there and be fed someone else's agenda? I guess if we could consume, if we all turned off Facebook, it would just go away. If we turned off CNN, it would be done. So maybe a better boundary, or finding better news sources who actually have something uplifting and help you feel hopeful would be it's sometimes hard for me to get people off of those, but when they do, it's like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this a long time ago? That's what I'd say.
Wow. Well said. And I love the car alarm one. That's hilarious, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. And to wrap up, so the last question I like to ask is, what is something you're most grateful for? And again, can come from any sort of background.
Oh man, I guess I'd probably have to go straight at my family. Like I'm blessed to be able to say I'm blessed in pretty much every meaningful aspect of life, but my family's at the top of the list. And they are the wind in my sails, and they are the joy that repeatedly sweeps over me. And yes, I have a wife and 5 kids. And so definitely has its challenges and stretches you and forces you to face where you're selfish or where you could get better. But I live kind of a pinch me existence, and I don't for a second take it for granted. And I get the opportunity to shepherd beautiful kids and a wife through this journey called life, and I wouldn't trade it for a thing. So that's where I'd say I'm most grateful.
That one, first of all, it's beautiful, but I knew you were going to go there because I could just feel that emanating from you. When I look at your website, your blog, your social media, like all of that is all a part of you. Mm-hmm. So that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And before we say goodbye, where can people find out more about Christian Elliot and True Whole Human and Deconstructive? What is Deconstructing again?
Deconstructing Conventional. So yeah, I've got a couple different places online. I'm not very active on social media, but I do have a blog that I keep. It's called deconstructingconventional.com. So I've just written, it's been up for a few years. Musings on all things health, from nutrition to fitness and COVID and whatever I find fascinating. So there's a lot of articles just on motivation and what keeps us stuck. So you can find me there. There's a pop-up that will show up for our quiz if you want to take our quiz and get to know yourself a little better. You can also check out our website is truewholehuman.com. That's where we just lay out our coaching program and some of the stuff that just our philosophies of some of the things I talked about here. But you can get to know us either of those two places. And if you want to subscribe to our mailing list, you can do that at the bottom of any blog, and then just stay abreast of what we're doing and what new program editions we create and any new content we put out there.
Well, I hope my intentional or unintentional forgetting of your website names helps people to remember the true whole human and deconstructive conventional.
Deconstructing, but yes, those are they're both a mouthful, and they're like they don't roll off the tongue as easy. So there's probably some marketing wisdom I could have had there, but they fit us.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yeah,
I'm going to link to everything in the show notes, of course, and. Yeah, Christian, I really want to thank you for your time. I know time is valuable, and I know you have things to do. And to all the listeners and to the viewers, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to share if you feel like someone could benefit from this show. And also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell and send us a review. All right. Until next time, this is Josh signing out with Simply Walk the Talk. Peace.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen. Better come give us a minute or two. Open the box up, we giving you tools. Giving your engine the fuel that it needs. Breathing into it, it's autoimmune. Make a connection, we're stronger in two. Making us one of a kind of a few. Work on the mind, but show me your moves. If you do what you say, you know what to do. Yeah.
Simply walk the